Hi, friends. There are moments when the heart says, I am ready to move on now, but the body still feels heavy, carrying what happens week ago, months ago, sometimes years ago. And that disconnect can feel confusing. You begging, wondering why your thoughts seems ready for a new chapter while your emotions still pause at old memories like they are unfinished conversation. Maybe you have experienced that strange moment where you laugh genuinely for the first time in a while and suddenly feel guilty for it. Or maybe you have been trying so hard to become better that you secretly feel frustrated with yourself for still hurting. Because somewhere deep down you thought healing would arrive like clarity, one strong realization, one peaceful morning, one final cry, and then everything would finally loosen its grip on you. But healing rarely moves in straight lines. Sometimes it circles back quietly, sometimes it revisits old wounds, not because you failed, but because you hurt is trying to heal more honestly this time. And if that's where you are right now, emotionally exhausted from trying to rush your own recovery, then maybe this movement is not asking you to heal faster. Maybe it's asking you to stop treating your healing like a race you are already late for. Before we continue, if this kind of calm, reflective space helps you breathe a little easier in your difficult seasons, you are welcome to subscribe and stay connected here. Not because anyone has all the answers, but because sometimes helps to sit beside reminders that makes you feel a little less alone in what you are trying carrying. There's a quiet kind of sadness that comes from believing you should be over it by now. People don't always talk about that part, the part where enough time has passed that everyone assumes you have healed while inside curtains, memories still sitting, sting when they arrive unexpectedly. A song, a date, a familiar street, a conversation that reminds you of what was lost, and suddenly your chest tightens again, even though you truly thought you had made a peace with it. That can make a person feel ashamed of their own emotions, especially in a world that praises quick recovery, quick transformations, quick confidence, quick closures. Growth should be visible and efficient. But real emotions healing is often invisible. It's happened quietly beneath ordinary movements, while washing dishes, while staring out of a window, while driving home at night, while pretending to focus during conversation because part of your mind is still untangling feelings you don't fully understand yet. Healing is rarely dramatic. Most of the time, it looks like continuing life while carrying emotions that have not fully settled. And one of the hardest truths to accept is this: just because your heart wants peace does not mean your nervous system feels safe enough to release the pain immediately. Sometimes the mind understands before the body does. You can logically know that something is over and still emotionally reacted as though it just happened yesterday. That does not make you weak, it makes you human. There are people who criticize themselves endlessly for thinking too much, when in reality, their inner world has simply been overloaded for too long without gentleness. Some people becomes emotionally strong so early in life that they never learn how to rest emotionally. They learn how to survive, how to endure, how to stay composed, how to keep moving, but not necessary how to soften. And even strong heart becomes tired from carrying unresolved grief with dignity. Sometimes healing takes longer because your pain was never given proper space in the first place. You rushed through it to perfect others, you minimize it to stay functional, you distracted yourself because slowing down felt unbearable. Then one day the emotions return asking for the attention they never received, not to punish you, just to finally be acknowledged. A lot of people are carrying grief they don't even recognize as grief. Not all griefs comes from death. Sometimes grief comes from becoming someone you never planned to become. Sometimes grief comes from watching life move differently than you imagine. Sometimes grief is tied to relationship that ended without closure, or years spent abandoning yourself just to keep peace with everyone else, or realizing that certain version of you were built entirely around survival. There is a grief in recognizing how long you have been emotionally tired, and healing from that kind of exhaustion is not quick because it's not just about feeling better, it's about rebuilding trust with yourself. That takes time. There is also something deeply painful about wanting to move forward while part of you still feels emotionally attached to the past. Pupils often assume attachment only exists towards people, but we can become attached to old identities too, old routines, old hope, old version of the future. Even painful chapters can become emotionally familiar, and the human mind often clings to familiarity before it chooses uncertainty. That's why healing can feel so emotionally complicated. Part of you wants freedom, another part fear what life will feel like without the thing you have emotionally carried for so long. Sometimes people think they are struggling to let go of pain when they are actually struggling to let go of the version of themselves built around that pain. That realization changes everything because healing is not only about releasing what hurt you, it's also about discovering who you are without constantly defining yourself through the wound. And honestly, that process can feel incredibly vulnerable. There are moments during healing where you may not recognize yourself clearly more anymore. You are no longer who you used to be, but you are not fully who you are becoming either. That in between space can feel lonely, confusing, emotionally unstable, but it's often where the deepest transformation quietly begins. Not the loud transformations social media likes to celebrate, not the polished version with motivational musics and instant breakthrough. Real transformation is often slower, messier, more private. It's choosing not to reopen conversation that drain you. It's noticing you reacted differently this time. It's caring less often than before. It's allowing yourself one peaceful moment without immediately expecting disaster afterward. Sometimes healing looks incredibly small from the outside, but internally, those moments are enormous. One thing people rarely say out loud is that healing can also bring unexpected anger. Not because you are becoming bitter, not because clarity sometimes arrives after the pain, and when clarity comes, you begging, realizing how much you tolerate while trying to be understanding. You begging, recognizing moments where your needs were ignored, where your boundaries disappear, where you keep giving kindness while quietly feeling unseen. That's awareness can create grief all over again, not only for what happened, but for how long you convinced yourself it was acceptable. Please hear this gently. You are allowed to heal at a pace that honors the depth of what you experience. You do not own anyone a rushed version of your recovery just because they become uncomfortable with your sadness. Some bonds are quite but deep, especially emotional bonds that were repeated slowly over time. Those kind of experiences often leave invisible tension in the body. Hyper awareness, difficulty relaxing, emotional numbers, overthinking, fear of disappointment, trouble trusting peaceful movements, and because these symptoms don't always look dramatic externally, people underestimate how exhausting they actually are. Sometimes the strongest people you know are simply people who become skilled at hiding emotional fatigue. That's why compassion matters, especially self compassion, not the kind that excuses harmful behavior, but the kind that stops speaking to yourself like you are a problem that needs fixing immediately. You are not failing because healing is talking. A flower does not bloom faster because you stare at it impatiently, and emotional healing does not deepen simply because you pressure yourself harder. Sometimes the constant pressure to finally heal becomes its own emotional burden because then every difficult day feels like proof you are going to backward. But healing is not measured by weather. Sadness still appears. Healing is often measured by your relationship to the sadness when it arrives. Can you sit with it without completely collapsing into it? Can you speak to yourself gently through it? Can you allow difficult emotions to pass through you without deciding they define your entire future? Those are meaningful forms of progress, even if they don't look dramatic. There are spiritual side of healing that people misunderstand stand sometimes, not in a mystical or supernatural way, but in the sense that emotional pain often changes how we experience life itself. After heartbreak, disappointment, burnout, or loss, many people begging questioning deeper things. What truly matters, what peace actually means, what kind of life feels emotionally honest, what relationship feels safe, what version of success is actually worth chasing. Pain has a way of stripping away illusions, and while that process can feel painful, it can also create surprising clarity. Many people spend years performing strength instead of experience peace. Healing sometimes asks you to stop performing, to stop proving, to stop forcing, to stop pretending you are unaffected by things that genuinely hurt you. That kind of honesty can feel terrifying at first, especially for people who learn early that vulnerability was unsafe. But emotional honesty often becomes the doorway to deeper healing. Not perfect healings, not permanent happiness, but a more grounded relationship with yourself. And maybe that's what many hearts are actually searching for. Not a life without pain, but a life where pain no longer controls every room inside them. If any of part of this reflection feels close to something you have been carrying lately, maybe share one thing your heart has been slowly learning during this season of healing, not polished advice. Just something honest, sometimes reading each other's quiet truths reminds people they are not navigating these emotions alone. There are another parts of healing that deserves more compassion. The exhaustion of starting over emotionally, because sometimes you finally gather the courage to trust again only to get disappointment again, or you begging feel hopeful and life suddenly becomes heavy again. And after enough emotional setbacks, the hurt can becomes caution even around good things, not because you want negativity, but because disappointment teaches the nervous system to itself. That's why some people struggle to relax even when life becomes peaceful. Their body still remembers instability, their mind still scans for sign that something will go wrong, and often they judge themselves harshly for this. They say things like, why can't I just move on? Why I am still affected? Why does this still hurt? But emotional bonds are not machines with rest reset buttons. Healing requires safety, rest, time, gentleness, consistency, and sometimes the hardest part is allowing yourself to receive those things without guilt. Some people feel guilty resting, guilty slowing down, guilty needing comfort, guilty admitting they are emotionally overwhelmed because somewhere along the way they learn that their worth depend on how much they could endure silently. But constantly enduring is not the same thing as healing. Survival mode can keep a person functionally for years while their inner world quietly ages for care. There is a difference between carrying pain efficiently and actually processing it. And many emotionally strong people were never taught that difference. One quiet sign of healing is when you stop abandoning yourself during difficult moments, when sadness comes and instead of shaming yourself for it, you listen. When exhaustion comes and instead of calling yourself lazy, you are recognize your emotional load. When fears appears and instead of mocking your sensitivity, you respond with patience. These movements seem small, but over time they rebuild the emotional trust inside you. And emotional trust matters deeply because many people don't only lose trust in other way after painful experience, they lose trust in themselves. They question their judgment, their institution, their choices, their ability to recognize healthy relationship, their ability to protect their own peace. That kind of self-doubt can quietly shape everyday life. It can make people overanalyze text, overthink conversations, second guess decisions, stay too long in unhealthy situation or avoid connection altogether. Healing from emotional pain is not just about feeling less sad. It's also about slowly learning that you deserve emotional safety again. And that learning process cannot be rushed. There are many there are maybe viewers listening right now who feel frustrated because they thought they had already healed. Maybe you were doing well for a month, then suddenly a memory returned or someone mentioned their name or you saw an old photographs, or life becomes quiet enough for worried emotion to rise again. And now you feel like you are back at the beginning. But revisiting pain does not always mean reaggression. Sometimes healing happen in layers. The first layer helps you survive. The next layer helps you to understand. Another layer helps you to grieve more honestly. Another helps to release shame. Another teaches boundaries. Another teaches self respect. Another teaches peace. Growth is really linear because human emotions are not linear. A person can feel strong one day and deeply tender the next. Both can exist together. There is wisdom recognizing that healing does not mean becoming emotional less. It means becoming less afraid of your emotions, less controlled by them, less ashamed of them. Some of the gentlest people in the world becomes gentle because they are intimately understand emotional pain, not because life was easy for them, but because difficult depend their compassion. And maybe your healing is shaping something inside you too, not perfection, not invulnerability, but deeper emotional awareness, greater softness towards others, clearer boundaries, more honesty, more appreciation for calmness, more understanding of what truly nourishes the soul. Sometimes difficult seasons slowly teaches people to stop chasing things that drains them. They become less interested in proving themselves constantly, less interested in an emotionally chaotic environment, less attracted to relationship where they must earn basics care, more down towards steadiness, presence, authenticity, quiet peace. And although that shift may feel subtle, it changes life profoundly because eventually healing stops looking like becoming who you used to be. Instead, it becomes learning how to live more honestly than before. There is a quiet maturity that develops when someone finally accepted that healing cannot be forced. At some point, many people stop asking, how do I heal faster? And begging, asking, how do I care for myself while healing? That question changes the atmosphere entirely because now the goal is no longer self pressure. Now the goal becomes emotional companionship with yourself. And honestly, many hurts needs that more than harsh motivation. You do not need to become unrecognizable to deserve peace. You do not need to erase your sensitivity. You do not need to pretend certain experience did not affect you. Healing is not about becoming emotionally untouchable. It's about becoming emotionally honest without drawing in every feeling that passes through. That balance takes practice and patience and many ordinary movements repeated quietly over time. Sometimes healing looks like waking up and choosing not to check the things that hurt you. Sometimes it looks like finally saying no without explaining excessively. Sometimes it looks like resting without apologizing. Sometimes it looks like allowing joy to exist without preparing for loss. So, guys, this message ends here. Before you leave, write this in the comments if it resonates with you. I am learning to be patient with my healing. subscribe to this channel and